Hello there, welcome to another special edition of African Football Archives, and today we are looking at part 2 of Africa's greatest footballers of all time. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Having said that, let's get straight into part 2 of Africa's 50 greatest footballers of all time, counting down from number 25 to number 1. One of the finest passers of his generation, Hassan was a sprightly wide player earlier in his career before moving inside to dictate play as age crept up on him. In both 2006 and 2010, he was the AFCON player of the tournament. He suffered, just like his teammates, for a persistent failure to qualify for the FIFA World Cup. A four-time African Cup of Nations champion with Egypt, Hassan remains the world's most capped male player ever. His 184 outings for the Pharaohs are unlikely to be bettered anytime soon. Having only represented Al Ahly for 3 years, he didn't amass the same amount of domestic honors as some of his compatriots. Time in Belgium and Turkey produced further honors and set Hassan apart from other Egyptian players who struggled abroad. He also played for Zamalek in Egypt. A member of Arsenal's legendary Invincibles team, Lauren was once runner-up in the African Player of the Year award. Another member of that iconic Cameroonian team of the early 2000s, Lauren played predominantly as a right midfielder and was present for both African Cup of Nations triumphs in 2000 and 2002, the Olympic gold medal triumph in 2000 and the World Cups in 1998 and 2002. He was player of the tournament for the African Cup of Nations in 2000. He was twice a Premier League champion with Arsenal and also picked up a clutch of other honours during his time in England, the final being the 2008 FA Cup with Portsmouth. He made it to the PFA Team of the Year in 2004. Grobbelaar may not have had the pure ability of Thomas Nkono or Joseph Antoine Bell, both of whom beat him in the International Federation of Football History and Statistics Keeper of the Century list, but he remains one of the continent's finest ever stoppers. He was capped over 30 times by Rhodesia and then Zimbabwe, but he made little tangible impact in international football during a near 20-year career. Grobbelaar was part of one of Liverpool's finest ever teams during one of their most dominant eras, as the Zimbabwean stopper claimed 6 league titles and 3 domestic cups. The highlight, though, was the 1984 European Cup final, where his bendy legs and expert penalty saves almost single-handedly helped Liverpool stitch another star above those Shankly gates. The Egyptian forward Emad Moteab is not a player that typically belongs to such exalted company and among such illustrious names. However, a glance at the striker's goal-scoring record and big game impact should convince you that his record demands re-evaluation. He was named Africa's finest striker in 2005, the same year that he top scored in the Egyptian Premier League. Moteab was present for Egypt's 3 African Cup of Nations triumph from 2006 to 2010. He scored 3 times in the 2006 edition, including game-changing goals against Cote d'Ivoire in the group stage. 4 years later, he bagged 2 goals, notably a sharp finish against Nigeria that turned the tide of the contest in the Pharaohs' direction. He also performed at the 2012 London Olympics and almost put the Egyptian Pharaohs into the 2010 World Cup. Flanked by Mohamed Aboutrika and Mohamed Barakat, he formed an iconic Egyptian offensive line at Al Ahly. He has won 6 domestic titles in Egypt and Saudi Arabia, as well as a memorable collection of continental honors with Al Ahly. Nicknamed Bibo, El Khatib was Egypt's icon during the 1970s and the 1980s. He was honored as African Player of the Year in 1983 and was also named as the Arab Sportsman of the 20th century. He was recognized by the International Federation of Football History and Statistics as the joint 11th best African player of the last century and by CAF in 2007 as the 2nd greatest. El Khatib won the Continental Crown with Egypt in 1986 and also played at the Olympic Games 2 years earlier. A hugely dominant figure with Al Ahly, El Khatib won almost a dozen of domestic titles with Al Ahly and also helped build the club's continental reputation with their first 2 African Champions League triumphs in 1982 and 1987. He was named the BBC African Player of the Year in 2005 and the Egyptian Footballer of the Year in 2002 and 2009, as the spread of honors over the years acknowledges Barakat's consistency and longevity. Barakat was a 2-time Egyptian Footballer of the Year and was the top scorer in the CAF Champions League in 2005. He was a central part of Egypt's ridiculously successful decade at the pinnacle of the African game. It's a shame he was only present in 1 triumph in 2006. The Mercurial, as Barakat was known during his playing days, arrived at Al Ahly in 2004 and embarked on a hugely successful 9 years with the club before his retirement. He picked up 2 CAF Champions League titles and 7 Egyptian championships among a huge swath of other honors. By all accounts, a remarkable talent, Alan Merrick suggested that he had an ability which matched up with the greatest players of the 1970s. Clive Barker argued that had Ntsoelengoe been around in the modern era, his status would be akin to Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. 0, except a few friendlies for the NASL Select, as South Africa were banned from competing by FIFA until 1992 due to the apartheid regime. He played in America, following an early career in South Africa with Kaizer Chiefs, where he enjoyed an idol status. Ntsoelengoe had a hugely successful career in outposts as diverse as Toronto, Denver, and Minnesota. Rabah Madjer was the player of the tournament as Algeria won the African Cup of Nations in 1990 and was also recognized as the African Player of the Year in 1987 and was named Algerian Footballer of the 20th Century. The Daily Mail suggested that Madjer defined Algeria's glorious decade in the 1980s. Madjer won the African Cup of Nations title in 1990 with Algeria having fallen at the final hurdle a decade earlier. He also represented the Desert Foxes in 2 consecutive World Cups in 1982 and 1986. He found great success in Portugal, making the key contributions as Porto won the European Cup in 1987. This is the highlight amidst a flurry of domestic and other European honors. Geremi was a versatile talent capable of operating in midfield or defense, particularly on the right flank, as well as a set-piece specialist. He was part of the sublime Cameroonian team that claimed Olympic gold in 2000, while also backing the African Cup of Nations in 2000 and 2002, alongside an excellent crop of teammates. Geremi also represented the indomitable Lions at 2 World Cups. Having played at top clubs such as Real Madrid and Chelsea, Geremi is no stranger to domestic honors. He is a 2-time UEFA Champions League winner with the Spanish Giants and also managed to win 3 major league titles, 2 minor league ones, and a clutch of cup triumphs. The cultured centerpiece of South African football in the 1990s, the midfield general was capped 50 times for Bafana Bafana. Alongside Lucas Radebe, the Doctor was one of the nation builders who won the African Cup of Nations so emphatically on home soil in 1996. He also scored the only goal of the game in Bafana Bafana's clash with Cameroon in July 1992, the nation's first game following its readmission into international football. He also represented the national side at the 1998 World Cup. Dr. Khumalo amassed numerous tournament wins, not to mention a few domestic championships during an initial 7 years with Kaizer Chiefs. He enjoyed brief stints in Argentina with Ferro Carril Oeste and the USA with Columbus Crew before returning to South Africa for a final flourish with Kaizer Chiefs. Thomas Nkano was ranked Africa's 2nd best goalkeeper of the last 100 years by the International Federation of Football History and Statistics, second only to his long-term rival, Joseph-Antoine Bell. A 2-time African Player of the Year, Thomas Nkano also made the podium twice more. the first choice goalkeeper for Cameroon at 2 World Cups in 1982 and 1990. The side were unbeaten and conceded only once in the 1982 World Cup edition. Nkono also won Africa's top prize with the Indomitable Lions in 1984, although Bell led that team in goal as Nkono left for his club team. Having played in Spain with Espanyol for nearly a decade, he achieved major success with the Yaoundé club Canon Yaoundé. He also won a swathe of domestic titles and some continental honors with Canon Yaoundé. A powerhouse midfielder who took his game to another level after arriving at Manchester City from Barcelona, Toure was the engine room of the Côte d'Ivoire's golden generation. He was named the African Player of the Year 4 times in 2011, 12, 13 and 2014, and was also named in the PFA Premier League Team of the Year in 2012. Despite emerging as one of the finest crops of players ever to be found on the African continent, Yaya Toure, just like his compatriots, suffered a whole series of African Cup of Nations heartbreaks until they won the tournament in 2015. He also represented the Elephants at 3 World Cups. A big game player, Toure was the outstanding individual in Manchester City, winning the Premier League at 3 different occasions. Those medals came after domestic championships in Côte d'Ivoire, Greece and Spain, where he won 2 La Liga titles and a host of other domestic honors and a Champions League title in 2009. Okocha's sublime technical ability and flair was recognized by the BBC as he twice won their African Footballer of the Year award, one of only 2 players to be honored more than once. He never claimed the CAF award but was runner-up on 2 occasions. He was named among the 125 greatest players in history by Pele. Okocha won Olympic gold as part of the talented Nigerian side of the early 1990s and the African title in 1994 alongside Yekini, Amuniko and company. He excelled at the 2004 African Cup of Nations tournament as well, where he was joint top scorer and the competition's outstanding individual. He represented the Super Eagles at 3 World Cups. The accolades are surprisingly scant for a player of Okocha's outstanding ability. He settled at Bolton Wanderers, a setting not quite fitting a star of his caliber following a decade wandering around various European leagues. Okocha picked an obscure collection of silverware from France, Germany and Turkey, but never won a league championship. Essien exploded onto the scene as part of a terrific Lyon side before joining Chelsea in 2005. Once a BBC African Player of the Year, Essien has been third on the podium of the CAF Award, a remarkable 4 times and a runner-up once. That title eludes him in a reality that surely wouldn't have been the case had injury not beaten so hard. This is surely an area of regret for Essien. A combination of misfortune and injury has meant that he was not able to guide the exciting generation of Black Stars as he surely would have hoped. He achieved little of note with Ghana beyond 2 World Cup appearances. This is a stark contrast with his club career, which was almost undiluted excellence. A favorite of Jose Mourinho, whom he suspiciously referred to as Daddy, the 2 men shared much of their success. Essien won 1 UEFA Champions League title, 4 major championships and a large swath of domestic cups with Chelsea. A fine central defender who at the turn of the century was considered among the finest in Europe. He was twice the runner-up in the African Footballer of the Year award and a 1-time BBC African Player of the Year winner. Kuffour represented Ghana at the 2006 World Cup but came a decade too early to truly enjoy the nation's current standing within the international community. He enjoyed a hugely successful 12 years at Bayern Munich, where he won 4 German Cups and 6 domestic league titles. While he is famous for his passionate dismay following the 1999 Champions League defeat to Manchester United, Kuffour made up for this with victory over Valencia in the UEFA Champions League final 2 years later. Kuffour is one of only 5 Ghanaians to win the world's premier domestic club competition. The defensive rock at the best of 2 dominant Al Ahly and Egypt sides from 2000 to 2010, Gomaa was remarkably consistent and tremendously unruffled during so many high-profile matches and intense fixtures. and ever present for the African Cup of Nations triumph of 2006, 2008 and 2010, Gomaa, like other members of that Egyptian side, failed to make a World Cup final appearance. An enormously successful career both in Egypt and on the continent with Al Ahly, Gomaa was present for 5 CAF Champions League triumphs. Of all those on the list, only compatriots Hossam Hassan and Essam El-Hadary have won more honors at club level than Wael Gomaa. Aboutrika was an incredible character and a cult of personality who was the artist of the heart of Al Ahly and Egypt's success between 2006 and 2010. He was the BBC African Player of the Year in 2008 and runner-up in the CAF African Player of the Year award that same year. A talismanic figure for the Pharaohs, Aboutrika won the continental title in 2006 and scored the winning goal as the North African Giants retained their title 2 years later. Aboutrika didn't quite win the honors of some of his compatriots, but still managed to win a tremendous collection of domestic and continental silverware with both Ismaili and Al Ahly. A genuine global star of the early 90s, Abedi Pele is a 3-time African Player of the Year and 1-time BBC African Player of the Year. Named in the top 3 of Africa's all-time players by the International Federation of Football History and Statistics and identified by his namesake, the great Brazilian Pelé, as one of the greatest 125 players who have ever lived. Unfortunately, he never managed to make a World Cup appearance, but won the African Cup of Nations with Ghana in 1982. A decade later, he was player of the tournament as the Black Stars lost in the final to Côte d'Ivoire. Abedi Pele built his legacy in southern France with Olympique Marseille. A defeated European Cup finalist in 1991, he returned 2 years later to win Olympique Marseille's only Champions League title to date. He was thrice a Ligue 1 winner with Olympique Marseille. Twice an African Player of the Year and twice a BBC Footballer of the Year, Kanu earned plaudits across Europe for his innovation, his unique style, and his unpredictable yet remarkable football skills. The only player on the list to have won Olympic gold but not the Cup of Nations. Persistent failure with Nigeria on continental arena is unquestionably a black mark on Kanu's record. He still represented the Super Eagles at 3 World Cups. Kanu scored 25 goals in 52 games for Ajax Amsterdam, securing a UEFA Champions League winners' medal in the process. He won the Premier League twice, amidst a host of other honors. One of the few players to have won the Champions League, the UEFA Cup, Olympic gold, the FA Cup and the Premier League, Kanu also ensured relegation with Portsmouth at the end of his career. The man Didier Drogba once claimed was his toughest opponent, Essam El-Hadary, is critically underrated. In time, we all hope that the Egyptian stopper's reputation will stand alongside those very finest goalkeepers to ever emerge from the continent. Essam El-Hadary was a 4-time African Cup of Nations winner, speaking of which no one has more titles than him. Few of Egypt's golden generation played their part more than Essam El-Hadary. Thrice he made the team of the tournament, and over 3 Cup of Nations final, he didn't concede a single goal. He has won the championship in Sudan with Al Merreikh and in Egypt with Al Ahly a remarkable 8 times. This is supplemented by an outstanding 4 African Champions League triumphs and a host of other honors from both Egypt and the continent. One of many Egyptians to struggle abroad, Hassan's legacy is built upon his relentless successes with Al Ahly and the Pharaohs national side. Hassan may not enjoy the status of some of the other players at the business end of this list due to his failings away from North Africa, but he is a forward who ought to demand international attention. The sublime poacher was a key figure in 3 of Egypt's African Cup of Nations triumphs, and also traveled to the 1990 World Cup with the Pharaohs. He remains the North Africa's top scorer of all time with 68 goals in 176 outings. 7 of those came during the 1998 African Cup of Nations, where he was top scorer. An irresistible career at club level saw him secure barrel loads of triumphs with Al Ahly, whose title of the African Club of the Century is due in no small part to Hassan's terrific contributions. 13 league titles, 5 Egyptian Cups and 1 African Champions League triumph represent a remarkable haul. He also won a second continental title upon arriving at Zamalek once the affection of Al Ahly ran dry. Milla was identified by the International Federation of Football History and Statistics as the second greatest African player of the last 100 years. Many praise Milla on account of his longevity, but he is one of the few Africans to make a major vivid impact at a World Cup, like Omar Mbik and Papa Bouba Diop, whose numbers and honors can back up his immense reputation. He remains the oldest player at 42 years to score at a World Cup, after scoring at the 1994 World Cup. Milla was twice African Footballer of the Year and made the podium a further 3 times. He made the FIFA 100 and was voted by CAF as the African Player of the Century. He represented Cameroon at 3 World Cups and won the African Cup of Nations twice. He was the top scorer at the African Cup of Nations twice and was also the player of the tournament in 1986. No player can claim to have dominated the continent's football in the 80s like what Milla did. Milla traipsed around a number of clubs in Cameroon and France, accruing some marvelous scoring records at Saint-Etienne, Montpellier, Leopold, Pelita Jaya and Tonnery. He won several honors including a handful of French Cups but never claimed a major league. A tremendous haul of individual honors indicated Drogba's longevity at the absolute pinnacle of the sport and his standing within the game. A magnificent 8 times, he has been in the top 3 African Footballers of the Year, winning the award twice. The almost comical failings of the Côte d'Ivoire's golden generation naturally affected Drogba's standings among other African greats. Despite appearing at 3 World Cups with the Elephants, he failed to secure the continental title with the Côte d'Ivoire despite coming close on numerous occasions. He was the tournament's joint top scorer in 2010 and he remained the all-time top scorer for the Côte d'Ivoire. Having been one of the talismanic figures of Chelsea's trophy-laden history, Drogba is one of the most successful Africans of all time in the European game. Certainly no Ivorian has achieved more. The highlights certainly will be the Premier League titles with Chelsea and the Champions League triumph of 2011. Sir Alex Ferguson suggested that the Ivorian frontman won his latter title single-handedly. Drogba was voted Chelsea's greatest player in 2012. Recognized by the International Federation of Football History and Statistics as the greatest African player of the 20th century, Georgie Weah's raw materials and sublime ability remains unparalleled. A 2-time African Footballer of the Year, Weah is the only African player to win the Ballon d'Or, receiving the award in 1995. That year, he was also named the European Footballer of the Year and the FIFA World Player of the Year. A 1-time BBC Footballer of the Year award winner, he was also named in the FIFA 100. Weah's great failings in terms of these rankings lies here. The diminutive stature of Liberia meant that his 60 caps never led to any success for the Lone Star. 0 African Cup of Nations titles, 0 World Cup performances and no significant tangible international contributions. It's hard to deny that this affects the player's legacy and his trophy cabinet. Similarly, for such a precocious, prodigious player, Weah's successes at club level were perhaps not what you would expect. Weah won 2 Serie A titles with Milan, but never managed to translate his domestic form to the European arena, arriving in Lombardy after the side had enjoyed a glorious era in the early 90s. He was an FA Cup winner in England with Chelsea and a Ligue 1 champion with Paris Saint-Germain. A 4-time African Footballer of the Year, Eto'o has also featured in the top 3 on a further 4 occasions. It is a consistency that a few can match. Eto'o was once 43rd in the FIFA World Player of the Year award. A crucial part of the great Cameroon side, so heavily represented within the list, Eto'o won 2 African Cup of Nations titles, Olympic gold, and represented the indomitable Lions in 3 World Cups. He has also made significant triumphs to the national side's African outings, being the top scorer in both the 2006 and the 2008 editions of the African Cup of Nations. Eto'o remains Cameroon's all-time scorer and is the all-time scorer in the African Cup of Nations history. Eto'o has won 3 UEFA Champions League titles with Barcelona and Internazionale, an unparalleled achievement among African players. 4 Major League triumphs in 2 different countries is a record only bettered by Samuel Kuffour. He was the man of the match in the 2006 UEFA Champions League final. That's all for part 2 of Africa's 50 greatest footballers of all time, counting from number 25 to number 1. If there are any great players that you think we should have included on the list, please feel free to let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share this video. Until next time, goodbye.